This face may be as old as 1.4 million years. It was uncovered at a cave site in northern Spain. But there is something important you need to know. The face you are looking at was not found complete. Only a few broken pieces of bone survived. And when researchers reconstructed those fragments, they discovered something unexpected. The face did not match the ancient population they expected to find. It resembled fossils placed in another scientific group, but not closely enough for a definite identification. So who was this individual? And what was someone with this face doing in Western Europe so long ago? The story begins in the Sierra de Atapuerca, near the city of Burgos in northern Spain. Today the landscape appears quiet. Low hills, open grass, exposed rock, and an enormous network of caves hidden beneath the ground. One of the archaeological sites here is called Sima del Elefante, meaning the pit of the elephant. Over a vast period of time, sediment accumulated inside the cave system, forming one layer above another. Those layers preserved animal bones, stone tools, environmental evidence, and rare traces of ancient people. During the 2022 excavation season, researchers were working inside a deep layer known as TE7 when several unusual bone fragments began emerging from the soil. There was no complete skull to immediately reveal what they had found. There were only broken pieces from the left side of an adult individual's midface, including areas around the cheek, upper jaw, and nose. Separately, the fragments appeared damaged and difficult to interpret. But as specialists studied how they fitted together, something remarkable began to emerge. They were looking at a substantial part of an ancient face. The fossil was cataloged as a TE71. The research team also gave it a nickname, Pink, but Pink did not emerge from the earth looking like the complete face shown in artistic reconstructions. The fossil does not preserve the entire skull, forehead, lower jaw, skin, hair, or facial expression. Specialists carefully cleaned and stabilized the fragile pieces. They then used detailed imaging, three-dimensional analysis, and virtual reconstruction to study how the surviving fragments fitted together. These techniques can help reveal the structure and likely position of the preserved bones, but they cannot recover the individual's exact appearance. Skin, hair, eyes, facial expression, and other soft tissue details remain artistic interpretations guided by the surviving anatomy. The fossil gives us part of the bone. It does not give us a perfect portrait. And that difference matters. The mystery is not that archaeologists discovered a complete face frozen in time. The mystery is how much this incomplete face appears to reveal. Researchers date the fossil and the archaeological layers surrounding it to between approximately 1.1 and 1.4 million years ago. That means 1.4 million years represents the oldest end of the estimated range. It is not an exact date written into the bone. The estimate comes from scientific examination of the archaeological layer, its geological position, and other evidence found around it. Even at the younger end of that range, Pink represents the oldest known human facial fossil discovered so far in Western Europe. But its estimated age was not the greatest surprise. The real mystery was hidden in the shape of the face. Elsewhere at Atapuerca, at a site called Grandalina, researchers had previously recovered remains classified as Homo antecessor. Those remains are considerably younger, dating to approximately 900,000 to 800,000 years ago. Parts of the Homo antecessor face have been described by researchers as having a comparatively more modern-looking structure. Because the two sites are located within the same wider region, Pink was carefully compared with those younger remains. But the faces did not match. Pink displayed a different combination of anatomical features. Its nasal area was flatter, while other preserved parts of the midface appeared more archaic than those associated with Homo antecessor. This suggested that Pink did not belong to the same population represented by the fossils from Grandalina. Researchers then compared the new face with other ancient fossils, including remains scientifically classified as Homo erectus from locations such as Dmanisi in Georgia and areas farther east. There were noticeable similarities, but there were also important differences. That left the research team with a difficult question. How do you classify an incomplete face that resembles a known group, but does not match it with certainty? Their answer was deliberately cautious. Researchers described Pink as having affinities with Homo erectus. In simple terms, This means the fossil shows similarities to remains placed in that scientific group. It does not mean the identification has been proven. The scientific label may sound like a final answer. It is actually an admission of uncertainty. Pink may represent a regional population whose facial anatomy differed from other fossils classified as Homo erectus. Or additional discoveries may reveal a population that researchers have not yet clearly identified. The comparison gives pink a place in scientific discussion. It does not give the individual a certain identity, and many personal details remain completely unknown. Researchers cannot determine the individual's name, exact age at death, voice, personality, clothing, or cause of death. No complete skeleton was recovered, so height and physical build cannot be reconstructed with confidence. But the archaeological layer surrounding the fossil can reveal something about the environment experienced by the population present at the site. Evidence from small animals, amphibians, reptiles, and other environmental remains indicates that the region was probably cooler and wetter than it is today. The landscape may have contained woodland, open, humid areas, and places with standing or flowing water. Imagine a patchwork of trees, wet ground, open spaces, and animals moving between water and shelter. The area offered useful resources, but changing seasons and uncertain conditions would also have made survival demanding. The archaeological evidence indicates that people at the site knew how to use materials available in the surrounding landscape. Researchers recovered simple stone tools from the same layer. Some were made from locally available quartz and flint that could be shaped into sharp working edges. These were not elaborate machines. Their importance lies in the practical knowledge needed to produce and use them. A useful cutting edge does not simply appear by accident. Someone must recognize an appropriate stone, strike it with enough control to remove a flake, and understand how the resulting edge can be used. Animal bones recovered from the layer also preserve cut marks. Those marks indicate that sharp stone edges were used to process carcasses, but the evidence must be interpreted carefully. The tools and marked bones reveal activities taking place at the site. They do not prove that Pink personally made a particular tool, hunted a specific animal, or created any individual mark. Still, they show that the population represented there could use local resources effectively. They could produce cutting edges. They could process animal remains. And they knew enough about the landscape to survive in an environment that could be cool, wet, and unpredictable. But this is where one incomplete face begins to suggest a much larger mystery. If Pink did not belong to the later Homo antecessor population found nearby, who was present in Western Europe during this earlier period, Pink predates the Grandolina fossils by hundreds of thousands of years. Researchers interpret this as evidence that different ancient populations may have been present in Western Europe at different times. The population represented by Pink appears earlier in the archaeological record. A much later population with a different facial structure appears nearby. But the available evidence does not establish the exact relationship between them, nor does it explain what happened during the enormous interval separating their remains. Climate and geography may have influenced when populations could enter or remain in the region. Some groups may have lived there for long periods. Others may have appeared temporarily and left behind only scattered traces. The evidence currently available cannot reconstruct that entire history. One incomplete face is simply not enough. Scientific classification usually depends on patterns identified across numerous bones and multiple individuals. A complete skull could provide much more information than a partial midface. Teeth, jaws, limbs, and other skeletal elements might reveal additional characteristics, but Pink preserves only part of one adult face. Researchers can measure its surfaces, angles, and proportions. They can compare it with other fossils. They can examine the tools, animal remains, and environmental evidence surrounding it. But bones preserve anatomy, not memories, emotions, or a personal life story. The evidence cannot tell us whether this individual lived near the cave, passed through the area, or reached the location under entirely different circumstances. It cannot tell us exactly how the remains became buried there. And researchers do not yet know whether the current classification will remain the most appropriate one. Another face from the same layer could reveal a repeated anatomical pattern. A tooth, jaw, or skull fragment might strengthen the present comparison. Or a future discovery could reveal that Western Europe's ancient population history was more complicated than researchers currently understand. That is what makes pink important, not because the fossil answers every question, but because it reveals how many questions were still hidden beneath the ground. A face creates a different kind of connection. Even incomplete, it turns an archaeological layer into an individual. A cheekbone, part of an upper jaw, the shape beside a nose. Fragments brought together after remaining buried for an unimaginable length of time. From those pieces, a face begins to reappear, not as a perfect portrait, but as a careful scientific possibility. Researchers date the fossil and its surrounding layer to between approximately 1.1 and 1.4 million years ago. They compare it provisionally with fossils classified as Homo erectus. They can describe aspects of the environment, the stone tools, and the animal processing found in the same archaeological layer. But the central question remains unanswered. Was pink part of a known population whose facial characteristics differed across regions? Or did this individual belong to a population that science has not yet clearly identified? More fragments may still be buried beneath Atapuerca. And until stronger evidence emerges, the oldest known human facial fossil from Western Europe remains exactly what it was when it emerged from the earth, a fossil with a nickname, but without a certain identity. Who do you think pink was? Share your theory in the comments. And subscribe to Almost Human Science for more evidence-based ancient mysteries, forgotten discoveries, and unanswered questions from the distant past. Because beneath our feet, countless stories are still waiting to be found. And in the next documentary, we will uncover another one.